find yourself worrying that as a society, we've lost sight of what we need to live as healthy, thriving human beings? It's easy to forget that we humans are essentially animals and we live in an interconnected ecosystem, and that we still, even today, depend on the existence of so many other species for our survival. I think this disconnection from nature partly explains the massive amounts of waste that humans are still producing every day, and it also partly explains the ongoing degradation of native ecosystems and species. Thanks to globalized, industrialized manufacturing, we have so much more access to so much more stuff than ever before in history. And whilst some inventions have been really beneficial to human health, a lot of it is completely unnecessary. And this easy access to so much stuff has normalized the view that humans are A, the dominant species on the planet, and B, entitled to take and make and produce and waste as much stuff as we want without consequence. I don't blame people for having feelings of entitlement, especially given that the media and corporations and government are constantly trying to sell us the idea that we need to go out and buy more stuff, whether it's to help ourselves or to help each other or to help the economy. Their driving impetus is for us to be consumers, not independent, free-thinking people. Now, the problem with people taking much more than their fair share of resources becomes much more obvious when you look at wealthier people, those who have much more so-called disposable income, who can pretty much buy what they want when they want on a whim. The feeling or perception that there are unlimited resources to access is still a deeply entrenched feature of many humans, even though we've long known that we live on a finite planet with finite resources. This fact is just so often overlooked and ignored. In an earlier video, we talked about the concept of refusing, that is saying no to buying stuff, to new stuff especially. Whilst refusing is an effective and often overlooked climate action, it's also one that is really hard to instill. This is especially so amongst wealthier people, where the allure of buying new stuff is just too overwhelming. And I'm not even talking about super wealthy people who are looking to buy a luxury yacht. The allure of buying stuff infiltrates anyone who can make a financial choice in their lives. And it could be talking about the allure of a certain brand of ice cream or crackers or pet food or clothes. So how can we reduce this sense of entitlement amongst people who think that they deserve something just because they have the means to buy? I'm just wondering how we can rein in this overconsumption. How can we temper the behaviour of wealthy people especially, who are out there gorging at the trough of excess? Well, maybe it starts with reviewing and reflecting on what are considered to be human needs. In 1943, a psychologist by the name of Abraham Maslow put forward a theory of human motivation that argued that there are 5 stages of need that motivate human behaviour. Think of this as setting out a framework of what we need as individuals to realise our human potential, whatever human potential means. The lower stages of this hierarchy set out our more basic needs. Stage 1 relates to our physiological needs to sleep and eat and drink. It also relates to other sensory activity, sexual desire, maternal and paternal behaviour, basic physiological needs for us to exist. Stage 2 is centred around safety, a need for shelter and peace and security. So in this stage, humans are gathering resources and money in order to provide that safety for themselves. Now, once those first couple of stages are pretty much fulfilled, then humans are going to be motivated to look to being part of a group. So that's all about love and belonging to a broader community, friends, family, that sort of thing. And once that stage 3 is met, then humans are motivated to activities around self-esteem, self-worth, the perception of their usefulness. So once stages 1 to 4 are being fulfilled to a certain degree, then humans are more likely to be motivated towards this concept of self-actualization. This refers to creative aspirations to derive happiness as an individual. This could be in the form of music, art, writing, inventing, any creative pursuit. Maslow saw this as realizing one's creative potential for humanitarian ends, which I think is a really cool concept. You know, we do what we do in our creative pursuits to help our fellow humans and everything around us. Now, this links back to consumption because corporations and businesses and marketers adopted Maslow's theory and used it to better understand human psychology and effectively to manipulate people to buy certain items. They used it to recognize that humans had certain needs and desires, and they communicated products that would help to promote and sell those products that met those needs. So it was kind of like a devious way to use Maslow's theory. Initially, you know, marketers would have been focusing on those first couple of stages, like helping provide products that met basic needs, you know, washing machines and white goods and more efficient kitchenware or more efficient household items. But in recent years, I feel like there's been a push to sell products and services that meet those later stages, the creative pursuits and the idea of self-worth and reputation and celebrity and so like online streaming services and makeup brands and fashion and electronic devices and all these sorts of things are kind of pushing towards making people feel like they're fulfilling those higher stages under Maslow's hierarchy. And I feel like Maslow actually presaged that this was going to happen. He has this cracking quote in his 1943 paper, and I'll just read it out for you so I get the words right. He said, "Culture itself is an adaptive tool, one of whose main functions is to make the physiological emergencies come less and less often." So I kind of interpreted this as saying, you know, when you have a successful society, then people aren't going hungry, people are well fed and well housed, and they can put more of their efforts and time into those higher stages. And we've often got that in modern societies, especially in 21st century cities. It's really easy to get access to the things that we need to meet those first couple of stages of the hierarchy. But one of the perverse outcomes of that is that food is exceptionally cheap and so much stuff is exceptionally cheap that it's just really easy to overconsume and waste it in the interests of fulfilling our needs. And we're motivated to buy more stuff to fulfill our needs. And it's just causing this kind of vicious cycle of consumption. And Maslow seemed to be aware that culture has an influencing effect on human needs. And I think that's worth reflecting on now that we're in the 2020s. Something that I feel is missing from this theory, and that's the notion that humans are part of nature and that we actually have a need, an implicit need to be a part of an ecosystem and be connected, and we are interdependent with so many other species. We can't operate completely in isolation from the rest of nature. And that particular need, that need for connection and that need for healthy interactions with the rest of nature seem to be missing from Maslow's theory. And so I've got this idea that maybe it's time to come up with something a bit fresher. I think we need to contextualize a model of needs that reflects that we're living in the 21st century. It's a time of climate crises, pandemics, wars, social isolation, celebrity, fast news, fast fashion. Like, in the context of all of that, and an awareness of the trajectory of the planet if we continue business as usual, this is like pulled out that there's a new need for our species that needs to be built in to a model of human needs, something that can send us on a positive trajectory. So I've been thinking a bit about this, and I feel like there's some sort of cool mashup between Maslow's model of needs and the permaculture ethics, which are earth care, people care, and fair share of the surplus. I feel like there's a mashup there in the context of where we are in 2022. Let's call it the cycle of human thriving for now, okay? It's a draft diagram that I'm working on. So in this model, that we've got this inner circle, which I'm calling gentle existence. And what I mean by that is things like humans being able to provide themselves with healthy local food, clean water, clean air, and conserving local elements of nature. So the gentle implies that you've got low greenhouse gas emissions, low carbon footprint, you're treading lightly on the earth, you're having a positive regenerative impact on the earth. Gentle existence is this inner circle. This is the core to successful humanity in the future. And I think that would include things like buildings made of renewable materials and clothing made of natural fibers, that sort of thing. The circle beyond it, which I'm calling community or community and social networks, that's something that kind of reinforces that initial inner circle. So that's about the connectedness to other people, a connectedness to other parts of your local ecosystem, and support networks to help each other to fulfill that inner circle as well as possible. Then if those first two circles are being fulfilled, kind of like Maslow's hierarchy, you got the first stages being fulfilled before you move on to the next. With these inner two being fulfilled, there's a greater likelihood that we're going to be able to move out to the third circle, which was about creative expression and problem solving and writing and music and arts and inventing and finding ways to celebrate and communicate and revere the awesomeness of the inner two circles. And it has an altruistic kind of motivation that people might find that you might find that there are wealthier people as you move away from the center of the circle, wealthier in an economic sense. And this model is trying to harness the privilege and responsibility that comes with that extra wealth, to encourage people to put their efforts and that privilege into creating a more resilient inner circle, providing equity so that more people can have healthy, thriving local food, housing, communities, education. So excessive overconsumption of new stuff wouldn't have a place in this model. It'd kind of fall out the sides. It would be at odds with what is central to what I think is the solution, which is this gentle existence core of humanity, that we find a way to live lightly on the earth, looking out for each other and for nature. Excessive consumption of stuff that is unnecessary or at odds with that, it has no place in the model. And so something that doesn't have place in the model is kind of frowned upon societally, and we start to change the norms. We can start to change the norms of what is expected of us as people. When children are raised, they are raised appreciating nature, recognizing the importance of local community, learning where their food comes from, learning how to help each other, learning how to solve problems, learning how to be adaptable. It's an idea that I'm throwing down just in the interest of this video, really, as a starting point for thinking about how we change things, how we shift it up, how we move away from the freight train of excess and overconsumption and waste that is happening in society, And it starts with imagining a more positive way of living, a more positive trajectory, starting to communicate how things could be different. And yeah, it kind of looks a bit utopian and a bit hippie, but let's take the best bits out of those positive visions and find ways to apply them in the 21st century. You know, we can still have Wi-Fi, and I think we could still have Wi-Fi and live fairly gently on the earth. We just might not be able to all overconsume lots of new stuff every couple of years with planned obsolescence, and we might not be able to drive gas guzzling cars and change the decor in our houses every couple of years and things like that. So look, I'd love to know what you think about this, and if this has even tickled your brain to think about a vision of what you would like to see in the world, and if you have any other ideas for how we can temper the behaviour of people who are feeling entitled to just take what they want, consume what they want, buy and waste what they want. If you have any other solutions for that you want to suggest, I'd love to hear them if you want to put them in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.